There was a physical thermometer on this one wall in a cooler part of the house, mind you. This physical thermometer on the wall, and that thermometer had to say 95 or above for it to be actually a situation where we could turn on the AC. Rigged thermometer. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it wasn't in the coldest part of the house, but it was a little bit cooler. It was, you know, near tile, etc. You ever use a warm washcloth on it? No, I did not try to game it because I would get found out. I have incredibly smart parents. Incredibly smart. There's no way that would ever work. Especially not with my mother. No way. I grew up in a household where you could not lie. You could not lie or squeeze your way out of a thing, you know, talk no jutsu out of it. There was no way. Absolutely not. You had to be truthful because you would get found out 100%, and lying was worse than whatever you did most of the time. So I just couldn't, I couldn't ever do anything like that, and I didn't really try very much. I did try here and there, but there was no way. Asian behind beating. I didn't really get beaten because I didn't do anything to warrant that, and also my parents didn't really feel that that solved anything. Instead, I would get punishments that I actually really cared about because, anything I wanted to do or have would get taken from me. Anything, you know, and one by one, you know, you do something that's not so bad. Okay, well, we take this one thing from you. Now you have to do this other thing. It would be like, okay, well, go, you're going to go outside and do yard work right now. The one thing I didn't want to do, right? They're like, oh, it's 90 degrees. All right, well, you're going to go work outside. You know what? Why don't you do your neighbor's lawn too? You have some elderly neighbors. Why don't you clean their pool? You know, right? Like, it was stuff like that. And that was, you know, in my kid head, way worse to me than getting hit. Like straight up. I hated that more. So that was always the punishment of choice if needed. Yeah, community service. Straight up. If I was like doing something like real bad, the way my mom was, she'd be like, all right, well, you're gonna go to your older neighbor's house and you're going to clean their whole house every weekend for 3 weeks. Like, it was shit like that. Oh, they need their groceries unpackaged and sorted out. Don't let them do it. You do it. Like, all these little things, she would just pile on all these tasks, and everyone would be like, wow, you're such a nice kid, so helpful. And I'd be like, yeah, and not telling them that I'm doing it because, you know, it's punishment. There's always stuff like that. And then if there was nothing, like, simple to do that she could keep piling on, she'd give me, like, some sort of really hard labor for, like, you know, whatever she could come up with. Actually, chat, have you ever dug a hole? Like, a really deep hole? You ever just have to dig a really deep hole in some hard-packed ground? Like a hole up to your own fucking waist. If I needed to be punished and there was nothing like good for me to do that was like community service based or something, she'd be like, dig a hole. Go to this garden, you know, that we haven't used in a long time. It's all packed down. Dig a hole and you have to be able to stand in it, and it has to come up to here on you. She'd like point to a spot and I'd be like, no. We would have all these neighbors that all had little patches of, there wasn't a lot of like greenery and earth around. It was very concrete, but there were a lot of spots where, you know, a neighbor would be like, oh, I always wanted to use this garden, but never did. And then it'd be years of just ground. And they'd be like, you know, your neighbor always wanted a garden in that spot. You should dig the whole thing out, the whole thing. That was the kind of shit I had to do. That shit was, yeah, actual prison punishments. It was, dude. And that's why I didn't do anything bad. Like, whenever I had a thought in my mind where it's like, maybe I should do this, I'd be like, it's not worth it. I'll just sit here without the AC. I'll just lay down on the tile floor, read something. Why not? You're smaller, so it's less dirt to move. Smaller people are also smaller, therefore moving the same amount of earth is harder as someone else. It's in proportion. That's not how that works. That's how it works, man. Pretty much everything is proportional. That's just how it works. That's why weight classes exist in certain sports, especially, right? Like, just having a body weight advantage over someone else makes sense, but also weightlifting. When it comes to weightlifting, sometimes there's some competitions where it's like the strongman competition, whatever, where everything's the same, and, you know, you'll just always have heavier, not necessarily taller, but heavier people always winning because they just have that much more muscle mass. But on average, you know, certain sports will skew in certain directions because if there are no weight classes or size classes or anything, then just being bigger is always advantageous for some, smaller advantageous for others. Like, people will be like, oh, smaller people better at climbing. You're short, so you should be a climber. And I'm like, no, you actually want to be really tall and lanky. So your reach is insane. You want to be tall for climbing, but also not have a lot of like super big muscle, wide muscle, right? You want to be like super dense and lean.